wonderful event put on by the UT Austin iSchool. It's amazing to have a room full of so many people who are interested in information science and artificial intelligence. You know, these are major investments that industry and society are making. This last year, the estimated capital expenditure for the major technology firms was $400 billion. $400 billion. And much of that going toward artificial intelligence. When you think about training these large language models, it could cost as much as $100 million. $100 million to train these large language models. And when you think about the queries that we conduct with applications like ChatGPT or Copilot, which is available here at UT Austin to all of our students, as students in my class know, each query can cost something between $2,000 and $200,000, depending on the nature of the query that you're conducting. Now, there is a tremendous amount of money that we're investing, that industry is investing in artificial intelligence. However, recent statistics from the US Census indicate that only 5% of companies out there are actually using AI. Only 5%. So is the investment worth the investment, or is it just hype? Well, today we're going to answer that question here with this panel, because we have some fantastic panelists who are here from the leading companies that are investing in artificial intelligence and helping to lead that charge tremendously. So without further ado, I want to introduce our panelists and then ask a key question to each of you. What is that KPI, that key performance indicator that you pay attention to when evaluating the performance of AI within your organizations? So Bill Grady is Director of UX Research at IBM. Bill, would you kick us off?
Absolutely. So we have more interesting metrics than this, Brian, but I'm going to have to say it's signings and revenue. At IBM, I'm proud to say that the stock price is up more than 30% this year, and it's really largely correlated to the fact that we've booked over $3 billion worth of business in AI that we're now looking to fulfill. So at the end of the day, it's not that interesting when it comes down to revenue and signings.
Thanks, Bill. Can we have applause for Bill for being here? Now another panelist, Robin Lerner, Senior Director of Academic Engagement, as well as Technology and Fundamental Rights at Microsoft. Robin, same question. What is that KPI that matters to you when it comes to evaluating AI performance at Microsoft?
Well, hi, everybody. You're going to get the policy answer because I am not your technologist here today. At Microsoft, one of the things that's top on our mind is how we prepare for the AI economy that's in front of us. And we're really looking backward at general purpose technologies of the past and how those have been introduced to our economies and whether or not we've adopted them. So we're looking at adoption pretty broadly, and we all have a mandate to use AI, use Copilot, use all the tools that we have, because we need to see what it takes for us to be skilled enough to use them and to really adopt them, and we need to test ourselves on that. And some of us just have a real aversion to it, and just we're afraid of it. And so before we actually, ask for some vendor support on the work that we need to get done, we're challenging ourselves to first use our AI tools. So we have a 100% adoption rate right now, and we're measuring that right now, and it's probably pretty minimal. It's probably about 4 times a month or a week or something, and every quarter that's growing amongst our own staff. So it's even less. It's sort of like, can we measure ourselves on how we use it and then give feedback on how that's going?
Robin, thank you so much for being here. I'd also like to introduce Michael Redding. Michael Redding is the Senior Technical Product Manager at Indeed, as well as the chair of our advisory council here at the UT iSchool. Michael, same question to you. At Indeed, what is that KPI that you pay attention to?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. My role at Indeed is really more around sort of internal employee productivity. And so for me, in our role, it's really about hours saved. Right? So how much time are we giving back to Indeedians who are using AI so that way they can actually use that time to do the actual, creative work that they need to do? Right now, it's about 800 hours per week, 800 developer hours per week saved per week. And so we're trying to get that a lot higher, but that is where we are.
Michael, that is an amazing number. And another strong welcome for Tommy Sally, who is the Chief Enterprise Architect and Fellow at Dell. Tommy, same question to you. When you're at Dell, what is the key performance indicator that matters to you?
Brian, thank you very much for that question, and thank you for having me here. The key thing that we are looking goes a lot where Bill was going. It's not a stock price per se, but it's an ROI. The AI solutions don't run for free. We talked about how much money being used for them. When we have a AI solution introduced into the environment, we start the ROI calculation immediately. If the ROI is not positive, it will get off from the circulation. And we do that to improve, obviously, the stock price, but also to make sure that we stay focused on the things that are important for us.
Tommy, thank you. And last but certainly not least, Catherine Walker is the head of content at the Cigna Group. Catherine, in your work in the healthcare field, when you think about that key performance indicator, what is it for you?
So I'd say in 2024, we've been doing a lot of experimentation on sort of low-risk OpEx use cases. How can we save money operationally? But as we're looking ahead to 2025, we're thinking more about scaled leverage. How do all these pieces that we're working on across different groups come together to do something truly transformational for the company and for the products that we're able to create?
Thank you so much, Catherine.
So I'd like to roll into our first question. There is a lot of excitement, particularly around generative AI, that can construct creative and complex products in different ways. However, some of the AI responses can sometimes include false and misleading information. How do we help our consumers? How do we help to make people informed consumers of AI? Catherine, would you mind kicking us off?
Absolutely. So I think there's a number of ways, and you can kind of come at it from a few angles. The first is the data that's being leveraged by the AI and ensuring that that is factual, it is checked, it is contained right within a secure environment. So we have a cloud where we do a lot of we have our LLMs that are performing some of these tasks. That's one that helps from the get-go. Next is providing some transparency in sources or the rationale behind the answers that are being provided, linking to sources, things like that. Another one that we've been working with is taking different perspectives and showing a multitude of perspectives that the human can then discern for themselves and make decisions on. You know, it's not one answer, but it's a set of answers that have a slightly different viewpoint. Also, feedback mechanisms obviously are really big, allowing people to say whether something was helpful or not, and if not, why. And then creating mechanisms to include all of that feedback as those experiences scale, to work them back into the system to provide improved answers going forward and learnings.
Thanks so much, Catherine. Michael, sort of your work at Indeed, sort of in a similar area, do you have sort of thoughts to follow on for that?
Yeah, so I think I can use an example. Most of the people that I work with are actually software developers at Indeed that are writing, the code that actually job seekers and employers wind up using. And so one of the things that we've really been trying to hit home is that AI tooling, AI assistants are really like a very junior employee that is sitting in your computer, right? And so really leveraging agents like an agentic model, really leveraging chat and say, no, it's okay. It will be wrong. Here's how you can prompt it. Here's how you can talk with it. Here's how you can get it to regenerate or kind of go back or say, oh, actually, that wasn't quite right. And the biggest way that we've actually been doing that, the way that we've had the most success in that, is actually leveraging sort of hands-on workshops of like helping retrain people who aren't used to that type of model, right? Like if you're a computer scientist and you're a very hard engineer, and your experience is, okay, well, like I'm going to work on this until it's right, and just not how AI works. And so it's like it's a retraining of people to say, no, like let them generate the first draft. You're the editor now. You're not the drafter, and that's just a huge mindset shift. And I think that's really how you can help. How we've been successful at helping people kind of get more used to the accuracy of AI is like really leaning into the fact that like, no, it will be wrong. Your job is to help correct it, and then over time that will just make it better and better. Like don't just go with the first pass.
Thanks for that follow-up. So it sounds like with Catherine with the work at Cigna and then Michael with the work at Indeed, it sounds like it's a combination of paying attention to where's the data coming from, and then that feedback loop through human input to train the models. And then also, how do we educate the people who are working within industry to actually use the models through that prompt engineering?
I would say my answer was really about customer or external facing AI experiences, and yours is about internal usage.
Yeah, and I think that just the important thing to remember too is like 3-4 years ago, like all of this technology was very academic, and like this is really the first time it's been in the hands of consumers and businesses. So we are all figuring it out, and I think that's the other thing is like people. One of the things that I think I've noticed a lot is like people assume that there's a right way and a wrong way, and like there's not. Like it is so new that there is not an actual right way or wrong way yet. And that's the piece that I think is really important as more and more companies adopt the technology.
Thank you. Bill, did you have a...
If I may, I think everyone knows this, but I just want to add one last piece. You talked about where's the data coming from, but I'd also add where's the data going, right? We're talking about personally identifiable information. We're talking about confidential information. Is that being used to train a model that you don't own? Is it going to a cloud that you... So just that would be another thing to keep an eye on as you're using it.
Gosh, thank you so much for those responses. One thing that I want to kind of build on, Catherine, you mentioned that customer-facing or work with AI. That sort of flows into a next question when we think about accessibility for people. Products empower people with disabilities, but also empower everyone to be inclusive, thinking about the 1 billion plus people out there with disabilities. It is the responsibility of tech companies to build products that are accessible. Robin, I was wondering if you, given your background at Microsoft, if you could help talk with us about what are implications for AI with respect to accessibility?
Yeah, thank you so much. And I am going to there's a lot for me to say about this topic. And I do kind of want to frame it. I spoke a little bit about the AI economy that we're looking at. We look at accessibility. We've been doing accessibility for a long time, and I'm excited to talk about that. But I think what's important is to talk about this in terms of trust in the technology and also adoption. Because as we look at where we're going with this technology, we know AI cannot be like we can't go the way of electrification, where we know that still today so many people don't have electricity. And Microsoft just does not want to see AI be out of the hands of people who need it the most, because we know, there are people here working on this for really essential needs. And I know you come from public health, and I was talking to several students who are really looking at how technology is going to help communities and how it's going to get to like very localized communities. And that's really important. And so when we talk about people with disabilities, so often they're invisible to a lot of us, and it's not only the right thing to do, but let's face it makes good business sense, right? These are 1.3 billion people who have some amount of purchasing power, who can use our tech, but we have to get it to them. So when we think about how are we going to prepare for that, we have to talk about diffusing our technology. That means getting our technology out in the world. So there's a lot of steps to take to first get our technology out. But then it is about, when I talked about using it, there's so many steps to take in order for people to just feel comfortable using the technology, right? And I think there's definition in terms of when we say 5% of companies are using AI. I think we don't stop to ask, what do we mean when we say AI, right? I think there's a lot of assumptions that are being made. So I think right now we're talking about, GPTs and sort of, large language models and Satya Nadella, our CEO, talks about us being in the year 2 of AI. So I think we can all agree that that's our definition of AI. But the pace of change is happening really rapidly, and we do not want to see inequities grow with this technology. It's really, really important. And my group, the Technology for Fundamental Rights, we're really focused on human rights, and we're the ones who kind of carry forward Microsoft's mandate on human rights. So accessible AI does begin with including people with disabilities from the start. So that means assistive technologies and also accessible technologies. So we're incorporating people with disabilities in the design of technology, but also creating products that help, right, people with disabilities. So a couple examples are Copilot is providing greater independence for people. And we are empowering neurodiverse communities with features that assist from drafting Word documents and summarizing meetings. You all probably use that. Hopefully you're using that in your teams. I love the Copilot translators and now recorders. So a couple of things that we're most excited about. We signed a groundbreaking agreement with Be My Eyes, which is an app that connects people who are blind or have low vision with sighted volunteers. And then we actually now have a new app called Seeing AI, which is similar to Be My Eyes, but it's powered by advanced AI. So we really believe we actually have an employee resource group that has been the ones working on the Bing chat for accessibility. So we actually have a very large group of Microsoft employees who are part of this. We also work directly we have policy people in accessibility working with our engineers. This is a huge, huge part of what Microsoft does. So we feel and I was really happy to hear that the iSchool has actually been in the past part of some of that research. So thank you.
Thanks so much. Yeah, show of hands, who's interested in accessibility and technology?
Oh my God, I'm going to take a picture of this. Okay,
so
that's awesome.
Let me move us along because we have a couple of other questions that I want to raise. So early in this panel, I sort of raised the conflict of, we're investing so much in capital expenditure for AI, and yet only 5% of businesses out there report actually incorporating AI into production. Bill, given your work at IBM, thinking about UX research, what are some of those uses of AI that you see happening?
Thanks for asking. I have an opportunity to talk to a lot of big customers around the world and have been asking them how they're using it. What are they actually spending on today? How is separating the hype from the reality? What are they spending on today? And so I guess the observation I'd share with you is that they're exploring it in lots of different use cases, but the use case that seems to be happening today most is within the IT organization. And I think if you break that down, the customer-facing organizations, it's a little riskier. You have to get that right. You're working with customers. It takes a little bit more time. They're exploring it and they'll get there. But within the organization for the internal projects, like we've actually heard from some on this panel, the IT organization is familiar with it and they're seeing real cost savings today putting it in place. So some examples of those use cases might be, we talked about Copilot. A lot of developers are already using it to help get superpowers to write code faster and better. We're seeing customers who are using it for translation. Maybe on the mainframe, you've got an application written in COBOL. You've got to translate that to Java. That's happening today. Using it for cybersecurity to be able to identify risk, reduce mean time to failure. So we're seeing a lot of adoption today in those spaces.
Bill, thanks so much for that. It makes me think about, so we're using AI, or starting to use AI in a whole bunch of different contexts. Now, for the undergraduate students here in the room today, sort of thinking about what do I do after I graduate? What do I sort of move on to? Will there be a job in this space available to me? Michael, maybe kind of given your work at Indeed, you could sort of answer the question of like how big of a threat is AI to entry-level and even mid-career jobs in industry today?
Yeah, that's an easy one. No, I think one thing that we are seeing, and I think it comes as no surprise to anybody on this panel or folks in this room that, the technology, like tech, big tech in general, has been going through a bit of a contraction. There was a huge burst of hiring during sort of the early COVID period, and that's cooled off. And I think one of the big headwinds right now is that lots and lots of tech companies are actually not hiring at all. Right. And so, university recruiting has really been cut back by a lot of companies. Entry level, there's a lot of, mid-level, even senior level people that are on the market, so it's like, even I know people personally that have been laid off 2 years ago and are still looking for a role. So those folks are now saying, okay, well, I know I am a senior level person, but I'm going to kind of take a step back because at some point, you do need just a paycheck, right? And so I think one of those are the headwinds, right? I think some of the challenges that folks who have been in industry a while have is that like the way that we do software development today is different than it was 5 years ago before AI, and it keeps accelerating. Right. And even outside of just software development, right? Like one of the biggest expenditures that we at Indeed have on AI is actually in knowledge management, right? So documentation and information discovery and people who have the skills in how to prompt AI to find information, to uncover sort of information, to be to kind of who have that familiarity with that tool, with AI as a concept in that tool, are going to have an advantage over people who don't. And I think that's how you differentiate it. It's been going around in a lot of circles on LinkedIn for weeks now, but there was a really controversial article that was just published that was the death of the entry-level developer. And it's like, that may be true, right? Like that role, the idea that you may be hired as an entry-level person with no sort of like experience and you'll get trained up, that may not exist anymore. But companies will always hire somebody. And if you know how to use AI to quickly learn, to onboard, to be a member of the team more quickly, I think you're going to set yourself apart a lot more than sort of somebody who doesn't have that familiarity. And I think that's probably, to me, where I said that's probably the biggest differentiator for anybody, no matter their level, is sort of the familiarity with AI and AI tooling and how to prompt engineering and sort of the actual tactical, how do I use this new technology? And I know that's what I look for.
Thank you so much. So students today should sort of think about building those skills. What about people who are in the workforce, sort of, experiencing AI as it's coming in? Robin?
Well, I was going to say something that, my job is to sort of link up academic research with where our policy experts are really grappling with things, right? And one of the things right now is I'm really, we're trying to find researchers who will say, how can we envision what the future is going to look like? Of course, nobody will say, I'm going to predict what the jobs are going to look like in the future because we can't possibly know. But we are seeing so much research on the evolution of our jobs. I mean, that is a place where researchers love to be right now. And so we are gaining right now so much data about how our jobs are changing and shifting. And the kinds of jobs that just don't exist right now, tomorrow they're going to exist. And the next day they're going to exist. And so I think our students are in such a great place right now because, like, if you don't hang on to what you know right now, but like you have these tools and these, that you can apply. It's a little bit like why Plan 2 was developed, right? To create thinking people. You are the thinking people in this field that you can adopt.
Yeah, and it's so funny too. I always joke. I get this question from like our executives all the time, and it's like, I just joke. 120 years ago, U.S. Steel hired a chief electricity officer, right? And it's like, now you just plug something into the wall and you don't even think about it. And it's like that's where we are now. Like I think all of us have a chief AI. Like a chief AI executive, right? 5 years from now, like that role is going to be just weird, right? Like that role will probably not exist because it's just going to be so ingrained in how we do work. And I think that's the thing to remember is like it is a technology just like every other new technology that we have all had to do over and over and over again. And the people who know how to use the new technology are always going to be set up higher. They will be better situated than the people who don't know how to use the new technology.
And that point about
every industry at Revolution, people have been talking about how the jobs will disappear, and we all left out without the work, and unfortunately, we still work. I don't know, despite our best efforts. So the jobs are not going away.
In the womb and
exactly, the jobs are not going away. But I think, like, if you think about entry-level programmer 5 years ago, that entry-level programmer that we hire today from a university or somewhere else, that's going to be what we would have 5 years ago a mid-level engineer. and because the tooling is so great, they can go into AI tools, they can ask about the code, they don't have to find a coworker who can explain it. They know exactly where to focus. It's easier to find bugs. The AI engines will help people to make the right decisions. So the entry level doesn't necessarily exist anymore, but there is still a new entry level. It's just way higher than what it used to be. And you are building that world, so I'm going to feel like a senile fairly soon, and I'll go and ride into the sunset while you take over the world.
Yeah. I'd like to add to that reassurance that jobs aren't going away. Been working on this for more than 15 years now, since we worked to launch Watson on Jeopardy in 2011. What will happen is the jobs will change. And so there may be some undergraduates here today at UT who think that they're going to get a degree and they're going to do that thing for 30 or 40 years for their career. The mindset shift that I believe we need to make is a recognition that jobs are changing faster, and we have to be open to continually educating ourselves, learning new skills, and reinventing our skills for the next job as it comes along.
I totally agree. I was going to say, like, the biggest piece of advice, and I think the people in this room have an advantage for being very intellectually curious and having growth mindsets, but to be built for change. And it's really underscored by the technology, like it's a good mindset and a life skill. But when we think about how rapidly AI technology, as an example, is changing our industry and changing the way we work, the way we think, we have to think and be prepared to continually pivot and be very curious and willing to put your neck out there saying, I don't really understand this yet, but I'm going to figure it out. And you'll have a huge, I think, advantage, because not everyone, I would say, is built that way.
Yeah, let's check it there.
Yes,
you could question. But Catherine, thank you so much for that statement. That idea of sort of built for change is sort of implicit in UT students and UT research. One thing that I've been thinking about in terms of AI is a lot of the training data that's used as sort of the basis for these large language models and other AI research was sort of built on the backs of Amazon Mechanical Turk workers who were paid a couple of cents, a couple of dollars for their work. But now, if we look at the value of data that's being used in AI, if we look at the real value, some of the people who are being hired to code that data, and I know you know this personally from your work as head of content at Cigna, they might be paid as much as $100 an hour to be helping to construct that good data for AI. Could you say a couple of words about sort of good data at Cigna?
Yeah, absolutely. So the data quality is, of course, really important. But I think one of the things that AI really is assisting us with is taking these massive unstructured data sets and being able to make good sense of them and use them in new ways, which is just a huge unlock in our industry for solving some of the problems that exist. A lot of the nature of the problems are that there are, completely separate data sets. One doctor, has no idea what is happening with another doctor. You have prescription information that's completely separate from some of your diagnoses. Your health behaviors aren't a consideration in the experience that we're creating for you. So bringing all these data sets together and using AI to help make sense of them is a huge unlock.
Thank you. So what I've heard from the panel around this question of the future of jobs, there are lots of opportunities, and be resilient. So
can I just say something too about that? One thing that's really interesting is the types of jobs that you think maybe wouldn't be necessary in a sort of AI can find anything world actually become more important. So it's like unstructured data, like AI is great at making sense of unstructured data, but if you don't have good unstructured data, right? If you have poor records management, if you have poor data retention policies, right? It's like garbage in, garbage out. And so it's like, honestly, jobs like records management and data management, things that are sort of classical information jobs, like actually are becoming more important because, now we can find anything we've ever created over the last 20 years. Like a human has to go through and say, is this actually still relevant? Because AI is not going to be able to do that, right? It makes that more important even than it used to be.
I would say another job that's kind of brand new in my space is renewed focus on taxonomy, because we are building our own, proprietary taxonomies that go into a semantic layer that connect all of these information sets. And that is so huge across internal use cases and external use cases, matching people to the right health journey that they should be on based on what we know about them. So that's an emerging discipline that's really big right now in my world.
Right, which is for anybody that has works in the archival space, it's just funny because we're bringing those principles, and those actually become even more important, I think, than ever in industry.
I feel like I'm seeing future members of our advisory council, right? So let me move on to our last question, and then we'll have some concluding thoughts. So this year has been the year of AI at UT Austin. And when we think about AI, one of the challenges, one of the concerns is the natural resources, the energy consumption associated with AI. Just a tremendous amount of energy goes into cooling data centers that are necessary for conducting this research. So UT President Jay Hartzell announced in September that 2025 will be the year of energy. So they're calling attention to the university's breadth of expertise, unique position in Texas, and open-minded approach to addressing the world's energy challenges. What steps can industry leaders take to help elevate awareness about energy consumption associated with AI? Bill, I know you have some thoughts on this.
Thanks. It's a great question. I mean, the largest growth in demand for electricity over the past year has been data centers. And I think the role that we play as leaders is when we develop tools, a rule of thumb of mine, how do you make it easy for people to do the right thing? How do you reduce the friction and make it easy for people to do the right thing? So as business leaders, as we're developing these tools, it's our responsibility to make it easy for users to see their energy consumption. And I believe that if we provide them with that, they'll have the ability to reduce energy consumption. And the good news here is that it's directly aligned with their incentives, because the most expensive part of this is the energy consumption. So if you can show people how much they're using and how they might be able to choose a different data center, different location, make some modifications to use less, it will cost them less, and that will improve this.
Thank you. Robin, I know we were talking a little bit earlier about this very question, what Microsoft is doing to help elevate this.
Yeah. Well, this issue is really something that is on the minds of Microsoft. We've made some really lofty goals, and I had to come here because I want to make sure I get this right, because we actually aim to be carbon negative by 2030, but by 2050, Microsoft plans to remove all the carbon the company has emitted since its founding in 1975. I mean, that's really lofty. And I think when you say that to the world, you got to deliver it. So I think to answer your actual question, I think you said, sorry, how do you elevate that? You tell people that you're going to do that. So there's a lot of money being put into green energy. We are building with wood. We're building with, we're finding partners to have green concrete, all kinds of things, energy smart buildings, all that kind of stuff. But I think AI, is seen as both a massive suck on the environment, but also as a tool to help us be more efficient. And one of the things I appreciate in my job is that client scientists are actually the ones who are big proponents of these technologies of AI, because I think they see that we can actually find better tools for knowing where we need to be more conservative. So.
So looking at the time, we're getting up to the end point for this panel, and we've talked about a number of issues. We've talked about making an informed consumer. We've talked about accessibility. We've talked about the opportunities for job and employment over the next couple of years, not only for our students today who are first years thinking about what skills I need to develop while I'm at UT, but also people who are within the workforce and how to think about those training components. I'd love to hear from each of the panelists. What are some hopeful messages around AI in industry?
Well, we have a new practice that we're just kind of introducing at the Cigna Group called Futurism. I'm not sure if anyone's heard of this methodology, but it's about looking at trends and imagining where those might be headed. What could we know about the future if we look at those very thoughtfully? And then thinking of the future that we want to build and how do we get ourselves there. There's a great book that many of us read by Jane McGonigal from Stanford, and there's coursework that we're bringing into the company around it. But it's really about how do we affect the change that we want by being really thoughtful about monitoring trends and building a vision that we share. So it's very hopeful, I would say, in our space. I think we're all really energized by the possibilities that a lot of the emerging technology is bringing to some of these really foundational problems that we have, like our healthcare industry. And we're building and training folks around those things. It fits very nicely, I would say, with design thinking practices as well, if anyone's familiar with that. But it's a very broad methodology that applies to a lot of industries.
Catherine. Tom?
So we are very excited at Dell on how the AI can be actually used to level the playing field across the nations, across the different demographics, and making people live the fullest of their life with the fullest potential, identifying the people who are going to be a really good soccer players at some point in a neighborhood where necessarily soccer isn't that big, but we can identify them. We can do a lot of good with very minimal amount of investments of human capital, because one of the problems what we see is specifically, like, let's take sports. We're all big sports fans, obviously, based on the tents over there and the little stadium. If you think about the amount of people that needs to be present for creating a good player, it's a staggering amount of money and it's a staggering amount of resources. Whereas AI can help you on finding the right people. It can replace some of that early stage coaching that is needed to get somebody to a level that they can be a professional athlete without them needing to go through a private school and paying a lots of tuitions and finding something that they would never have resources to. And we can scan that across the globe. The scale is going to be a massive, because the scale was never there when people were involved.
Thank you. Michael?
Yeah, that's really interesting. You know, I think for me, and maybe this is just part of my role and how I look at it too, is, you know, how can we free up time for people to do things that are meaningful for them? A really good example is there's a tool that I use right now called Reclaim, and all it really does is it schedules your meetings. It looks at your calendar and says, hey, you really need this time back in your day so you can go do this really important thing. I'm going to cancel your meetings for that afternoon. And it's like, that saves me 30 minutes, an hour a week, right? And that's just like time I just don't even have to think about anymore. And I think those are the types of technology assisted, like, life improvement things that AI can do. And it is still the technology is still so new that, like, we don't even necessarily know yet what those are going to be. And I think there's a huge opportunity for all of us to sort of think about, to find new ways to have more time for ourselves to do the things we want to do. And AI is the thing that will help us get there.
Thanks, Michael. Robin, what are your thoughts?
Well, before I started working at Microsoft, I ran a nonprofit organization. And I think a lot about who is resource strapped and who really needs the help. And I think a lot about these kind of community-based organizations. And at Microsoft, I mean, we really think about the people. I mean, this is about people. And I think a lot of this conversation around the tag is the people part of that is lost. And when you hear a lot of fear factor of, you know, I heard not too long ago, I heard upstairs in this building, a policymaker say, people are going to lose their jobs. It's just how it's going to be. And I think we've got to reframe that. And I think it's up to all of us and our companies to be part of how we reframe that and how we are part of the skilling and the education and diffusion, but the teaching and the helping people, because it is scary. And we've got to acknowledge that. And we've got to help people learn how, because that's an easy tool, but can people afford it? Right. Can they, and then how do they get off the couch and onto, you know, that first step? Like, so I think it's all on all of us to do that. And I hope that all of you will become evangelists for how it can help people and not how it's going to take over, right? The robots are not coming for us. So.
Right. They will help. They're here to help.
Thanks, Robin. Bill, what are your thoughts?
Well, if I may, I'm actually going to start with a word of caution, and then I'll end on the positive note. I'm a positive person, but I wanted to share a thought. I think we all have an important responsibility. Everyone here is interested in a new and emerging technology, and we have a responsibility, an important responsibility. We make decisions every day. I don't want you to trivialize those decisions. I'll share one that I made, and then I'll talk about one that we all make. When I was brand manager for Watson, we had an opportunity to bid on a $1 billion contract with the U.S. government, with the military. And I mentioned our key KPI is revenue, and the sales guys wanted to win a $1 billion contract. And I made a decision that we would not pursue that contract. Whether you think it's good or bad, that's irrelevant. As a brand manager, I didn't think it was right for our AI to be associated with the military, and we chose not to pursue this contract. There's lots of small decisions we make every day. Which LLM are you using? Are you using an LLM that you believe is free of bias and hasn't been trained on people's personal information? Are you using an LLM that you think you can stand behind? So please, I just want to remind everyone the important responsibility that we have in a new and growing technology in this business. So thank you for that. And then on the positive note, what we can do with this is just revolutionary. I love the healthcare example. It's applicable in all industries, but we did some really cool work with, Catherine and I were talking about a partnership earlier. We did some cool work with health, and what we found is, I'll share one example. If you have a rare cancer, and you're in a small regional hospital, the doctor there may have seen it once in their whole career. They might not quite know what to do with it. Maybe you go to MD Anderson, and that doctor will have seen it several times. They have a better idea what to do about that cancer. I'm so confident that we'll be able to train the AI to have seen every case ever, and they'll be better equipped. And then what happens? Well, then the regional hospital has access to that. But even better than that, Tommy was talking about the democratization of this. The smallest village in Africa will have access to exactly that same medical diagnosis that anyone will in the world. That's what's so promising about this. That's why we're all invested in and excited about it. The potential is so exciting.
Who's excited? Mm-hmm. Let's have a warm thank you for our panelists. And I believe Shannon's going to conclude us.
I won't keep you long because I know lunchtime is up next. Y'all, my name is Shannon Hickson, and I'm the Director of Development and Alumni Relations, and I get to work with all these wonderful people. And I want to do 2 or 3 things. Number one, say thank you, existing panelists, and then any other panelists that are here from earlier. I learned so much. I took copious notes. I'm also excited, and I'm curious. I have more questions, and so I hope you guys feel the same. Also, students, I hope you feel excited. I hope you feel optimistic, and you are well positioned as iSchool students, because I took a couple notes. One of the key words that stuck out to me, of course, is change, being nimble and flexible, intellectually curious, and then just fearless. And so I feel like all of you in the room already possess those attributes. Who agrees with me? Y'all don't be shy. Also, finally, again, with the thank yous, I want to name check a few people. Dr. Ken Fleshman, thank you for being our fearless leader and coming up with this great event. Y'all, this is the first of many. This year, like we talked about, is the year of AI. Next year is energy at the school, but information is ever present. So we look forward to these showcases every year. Topics will change, they may grow, but I hope you took away a lot of insights from wonderful posters outside, panels today, and then also, again, the work that's being done. I also want to call out our Dr. John Newman. Are you in the room? If you're an employer, I want you to make sure to keep John in mind, because John leads our capstone efforts. And so if you have projects that you are interested in, or even back of the burner things, talk to John, because we have talented students that are itching to do projects with you. Also, if you hire people, internships, full-time employment, who would like that? Hey, okay. So if you need a job, the opportunities are here as well. And then final shout out, y'all. I want to name check Lauren Hatfield. Lauren was our fearless leader, that every detail that was considered today, she probably was in charge of it, or she made sure that it happened. And so I wanted to say thank you personally, Lauren, to all of you, and be excited, be curious, and let's go do some things. Have a great weekend, everyone. And I think that's it. Do I have any other shout outs? Any other words? Lunchtime? Hook 'em, y'all. Thank you.
Thank you all.